Metamorphoses by Ovid, written 1 ACE by Sir Samuel Garth, John Dryden et al., Book the 9th. The story of Achelous and Hercules. Theseus requests the god to tell his woes, whence his maimed brow and whence his groans arose. Whence thus the Caledonian stream replied, with twining reeds his careless tresses tied. Ungrateful is the tale, for who can bear, when conquered, to rehearse the shameful war? Yet I'll the melancholy story trace, so great a conqueror softens the disgrace. Nor was it still so mean the prize to yield as great and glorious, to dispute the field. Perhaps you've heard of Danaera's name, for all the country spoke her beauty's fame. Long was the nymph by numerous suitors wooed, each with address his envied hopes pursued. I joined the loving band to gain the fair, revealed my passion to her father's ear. Their vain pretensions all the rest resign, Alcides only strove to equal mine. He boasts his birth from Jove, recounts his spoils, his stepdame's hate subdued and finished toils. Can mortals then, said I, with gods compare? Behold a god, mine is the watery care. Through your wide realms I take my mazy way, branch into streams and o'er the region stray. No foreign guest your daughter's charms adores, but one who rises in your native shores. Let not his punishment your pity move. Is Juno's hate an argument for love? Though you your life from fair Alcma drew, Jove's a feigned father, or by fraud a true. Choose then, confess thy mother's honor lost, or thy descent from Jove no longer boast. While thus I spoke, he looked with stern disdain, nor could the sallies of his wrath restrain, which thus broke forth. This arm decides our right. Vanquish in words, be mine the prize in fight. Bold he rushed on, my honor to maintain. I fling my verdant garments on the plain. My arms stretched forth, my pliant limbs prepare, and with bent hands expect the furious war. O'er my sleek skin now gathered dust he throws, and yellow sand his mighty muscles strows. Oft he my neck and nimble legs assails. He seems to grasp me, but as often fails. Each part he now invades with eager hand. Safe in my bulk, immovable I stand. So, when loud storms break high and foam and roar against some mole that stretches from the shore, the firm foundation lasting tempest braves, defies the warring winds and driving waves. A while we breathe, then forward rush amain, renew the combat and our ground maintain. Foot strove with foot, I prone extend my breast, hands war with hands, and forehead pressed. Thus have I seen two furious bulls engage, inflamed with equal love and equal rage. Each claims the fairest heifer of the grove, and conquest only can decide their love. And the trembling herds survey the fight from far, till victory decides the important war. 3 times in vain he strove my joints to rest, to force my hold and throw me from his breast. The 4th he broke my grip, that clasped him round. Then, with new force, he stretched me on the ground. Close to my back the mighty burthen clung, as if a mountain o'er my limbs were flung. Believe my tale, nor do I boastful aim by feigned narration to extol my fame. No sooner from his grasp I freedom get, unlock my arms that flowed with trickling sweat. But quick he seized me and renewed the strife, as my exhausted bosom pants for life. My neck he grips, my knee to earth he strains. I fall and bite the sand with shame and pains. Overmatched in strength to wiles and arts I take, and slip his hold in form of speckled snake. Who, when I wreathed inspires my body round, or showed my forky tongue with hissing sound, smiles at my threats. Such foes my cradle knew, he cries, dire snakes infant hand overthrew. A dragon's form might other conquests gain. To war with me you take that shape in vain. Art thou proportioned to the hydra's length, who by his wounds received augmented strength? He raised 100 hissing heads in air, when one I loped upsprung a dreadful pair. By his wounds fertile and with slaughter strong, singly I quelled him and stretched dead along. What canst thou do? A form precarious, prone to rouse my rage with terrors not thy own. He said, and round my neck his hands he cast, and with his straining fingers wrung me fast. My throat he tortured close as pincers clasp. In vain I strove to loose the forceful grasp. Thus, vanquished too, a third form still remains. Changed to a bull, my lowing fills the plains. Straight on the left his nervous arms were thrown upon my brindled neck and tugged it down. Then deep he struck my horn into the sand, and felled my bulk among the dusty land. Nor yet his fury cooled. Betwixt rage and scorn, from my maimed front he tore the stubborn horn. This, heaped with flowers and fruits the Naiads bear, sacred to plenty and the bounteous year. He spoke when lo, a beauteous nymph appears, girt like Diana's train with flowing hairs. The horn she brings in which all autumn stored, and ruddy apples for the second board. Now morn begins to dawn. The sun's bright fire gilds the high mountains, and the youths retire. Nor stayed they, till the troubled stream subsides, and in its bounds with peaceful current glides. But Achelous in his oozy bed deep hides his brow deformed and rustic head. No real wound the victor's triumph showed, but his lost honours grieved the watery god. Yet even that loss the willow's leaves overspread, and verdant reeds in garlands bind his head. The death of Nisus the centaur. This virgin too thy love, O Nisus, found. To her alone you owe the fatal wound. As the strong son of Jove his bride conveys, where his paternal lands their bulwarks raise. Where from her slopy urn Evenus pours, her rapid current swelled by wintry showers. He came. The frequent eddies whirled the tide, and the deep-rolling waves all past denied. As for himself, he stood unmoved by fears, for now his bridal charge employed his cares. The strong-limbed Nisus thus officious cried, for he the shallows of the stream had tried. Swim thou, Alcides, all thy strength prepare, on yonder bank I'll lodge thy nuptial care. The Aeonian chief to Nisus trusts his wife, all pale and trembling for her hero's life. Clothed as he stood in the fierce lion's hide, the laden quiver o'er his shoulder tied. For across the stream his bow and club were cast, swift he plunged in. These billows shall be passed, he said, nor sought where smoother waters glide, but stemmed the rapid dangers of the tide. The bank he reached, again the bow he bears, when hark, his bride's known voice alarms his ears. Nisus, to thee I call, aloud he cries. Vain is thy trust and flight, be timely wise. Thou monster double-shaped, my right set free, if thou no reverence owe my fame and me. Yet kindred should thy lawless lust deny. Think not, perfidious wretch, from me to fly. Though winged with horse's speed, wound shall pursue. Swift as his words the fatal arrow flew. The centre's back amidst the feathered wood, and through his breast the barbed weapon stood. Which, when in anguish through the flesh he tore, from both the wounds gushed forth the spumy gore, mixed with Lernaean venom. This he took, nor dire revenge his dying breast forsook. His garment in the reeking purple dyed, to rouse love's passion, he presents the bride. The death of Hercules. Now a long interval of time succeeds, when the great son of Jove's immortal deeds and stepdame's hate had filled earth's utmost round. He from Oechalia, with new laurels crowned, in triumph was returned. He rites prepares, and to the king of gods directs his prayers, when fame, who falsehood clothes in truth's disguise, and swells her little bulk with growing lies, thy tender ear, O Deianira, moved, that Hercules the fair Io loved. Her love believes the tale, the truth she fears of his new passion, and gives way to tears. The flowing tears diffused her wretched grief. Why seek I thus from streaming eyes relief, she cries. Indulge not these fruitless cares, the harlot will but triumph in thy tears. Let something be resolved, while yet there's time, my bed not conscious of a rival's crime. In silence shall I mourn, or loud complain? Shall I seek Calydon, or here remain? What though allied to Meleager's fame, I boast the honours of a sister's name? My wrongs perhaps now urge me to pursue some desperate deed, by which the world shall view how far revenge and woman's rage can rise, when weltering in her blood the harlot dies. Thus, various passions ruled by turns her breast. She now resolves to sin the fatal vest, dyed with Lernanian gore, whose power might move his soul anew, and rouse declining love. Nor knew she what sudden rage bestows, when she to Lycus' trust her future woes. With soft endearments she the boy commands to bear the garment to her husband's hands. The unwitting hero takes the gift in haste, and o'er his shoulders Lerna's poison cast, as first the fire with frankincense he strows, and utters to the gods his holy vows. And on the marble altar's polished frame pours forth the grapey stream, the rising flame. Suddenly dissolves the subtle poisonous juice, which taints his blood, and all his nerves bedews. With wonted fortitude he bore the smart, and not a groan confessed his burning heart. At length his patience was subdued by pain. He rends the sacred altar from the plain. Oet's wide forests echo with his cries. Now to rip off the deathful robe he tries. Wherever he plucks the vest, the skin he tears. The mangled muscles and huge bones he bears. A ghastful sight. O raging with his pain to rend the sticking plague, he tugs in vain. As the red iron hisses in the flood, so boils the venom in his curdling blood. Now with the greedy flame his entrails glow, and livid sweats down all his body flow. The cracking nerves burnt up are burst in twain. The lurking venom melts his swimming brain. Then, lifting both his hands aloft, he cries, Glut thy revenge, dread empress of the skies. Sate with my death the rancour of thy heart. Look down with pleasure, and enjoy my smart. Or if ever pity moved a hostile beast, for here I stand thy enemy professed. Take hence this hateful life, with tortures torn, inured to trouble and to labours borne. Death is the gift most welcome to my woe, and such a gift a stepdame may bestow. Was it for this Bursarus was subdued, whose barbarous temples reeked with strangers' blood? Pressed in these arms his fate Antaeus found, nor gained recruited vigour from the ground. Did I not triple-formed Geiron fell, or did I fear the triple dog of hell? Did not these hands the bull's armed head hold? Are not our mighty toils in Elis told? Do not the Stymphalian lakes proclaim thy fame, and fair Parthenian woods resound thy name? Who seized the golden belt of Thermodon, and who the dragon guard apples won? Could the fierce centaur's strength my force withstand, or the fell boar that spoiled the Arcadian land? Did not these arms the Hydra's rage subdue, who from his wounds to double fury grew? And what if the Thracian horses fat with gore, who human bodies in their mangers tore, I saw, and with their barbarous lord overthrew? What if these hands Nemea's lion slew? Did not this neck the heavenly globe sustain? The female partner of the Thunderer's reign, fatigued at length, suspends her harsh commands, yet no fatigue hath slacked these valiant hands. But now new plagues pursue me. Neither force, nor arms, nor darts can stop their enraging course, devouring through. Flame my racked entrails strays, and on my lungs and shriveled muscles preys. Yet still Eurystheus breathes the vital air. What mortal now shall seek the gods with prayer? The transformation of Lycus into a rock. The hero said, and with the torture stung, furious over Ovid's lofty hills he sprung, stuck with the shaft, thus scours the tiger round, and seeks the flying author of his wound. Now might you see him trembling. Now he vents his anguished soul in groans and loud laments. He strives to tear the clinging vest in vain, with uprooted forests strows the plain. Now kindling into rage his hands he rears, and to his kindred gods directs his prayers, when Lycus lo he spies, who trembling flew, and in a hollow rock concealed from view had shunned his wrath. Now grief renewed his pain, his madness chafed, and thus he raves again. Lycus, to thee alone my fate I owe, who bore the gift, the cause of all my woe. The youth all pale with shivering fear was stung, and vain excuses faltered on his tongue. Alcides snatched him as with suppliant face he strove to clasp his knees and beg for grace. He tossed him o'er the head with airy course, and hurled with more than an engine's force. Far o'er the Euboean main aloof he flies, and hardens by degrees amid the skies. So showery drops when chilly tempests blow, thicken at first, then whiten into snow. In balls congealed the rolling fleeces bound, in solid hail result upon the ground. Thus, whirled with nervous force through distant air, the purple tide forsook his veins with fear. All moisture left his limbs, transformed to stone. In ancient days the craggy flint was known. Still, in the Euboean waves his front he rears, still the small rock in human form appears, and still the name of hapless Lycus bears. The apotheosis of Hercules, but now the hero of immortal birth, fells Ovid's forest on the groaning earth. A pile he builds to Philoctetes' care. He leaves his deathful instruments of war. To him commits those arrows which again shall see the bulwarks of the Trojan reign. The son of Paeon lights the lofty pyre. High round the structure climbs the greedy fire. Placed on the top thy nervous shoulders spread, with the Nemean spoils thy careless head. Raised on a knotty club with look divine, here thou, dread hero of celestial line, wert stretched at ease, as when a cheerful guest wine crowned thy bowels, and flowers thy temples dressed. Now on all sides the potent flames aspire, and crackle around those limbs that mock the fire. A sudden terror seized the immortal host, who thought the world professed defender lost. This, when the thunderer saw, with smiles he cries, "'Tis from your fears, ye gods, my pleasures rise. Joy swells my breast that my all-ruling hand o'er such a grateful people boasts command, that you, my suffering progeny, would aid, though to his deeds this just respect be paid. Me you've obliged. Be all your fears forborne. The Otian fires do thou, great hero, scorn. Who vanquished all things shall subdue the flame. That part alone of gross maternal frame fire shall devour, while what from me he drew shall live immortal, and its force subdue. That, when he's dead, I'll raise to realms above. May all the powers the righteous act approve. If any god dissent and judge too great the sacred honors of the heavenly seat, even he shall own his deeds deserve the sky. Even he reluctant shall at length comply. The assembled powers assent. No frown till now had marked with passion vengeful Juno's brow. Meanwhile, whatever was in the power of flame was all consumed. His body's nervous frame no more was known. Of human form bereft, the eternal part of Jove alone was left. As an old serpent casts his scaly vest, wreathes in the sun in youthful glory dressed, so when Alcides' mortal mold resigned, his better part enlarged and grew refined. August his visage shone. Almighty Jove in his swift car his honored offspring drove. High o'er the hollow clouds the coursers fly, and lodge the hero in the starry sky. The transformation of Galanthus. Atlas perceived the load of heaven's new guest. Revenge still rancored in Eurystheus' breast against Alcides' race. Alcmena goes to Iole to vent maternal woes. Here she pours forth her grief, recounts the spoils her son had bravely reaped in glorious toils. This Iole by Hercules commands Hylas had loved and joined in nuptial bands. Her swelling womb the teeming birth confessed, to whom Alcmena thus her speech addressed. Oh, may the gods protect thee in that hour, when amidst thy throes thou callest the Ilithian power. May no delays prolong thy racking pain, as when I sued for Juno's aid in vain. When now Alcides' mighty birth drew nigh, and the 10th sign rolled forward on the sky, my womb extends with such a mighty load as Jove, the parent of the burthen, showed. I could no more the increasing smart sustain, my horror kindles to recount the pain. Cold chills my limbs while I the tale pursue, and now methinks I feel my pangs anew. 7 days and nights amidst incessant throes, fatigued with ills I lay, nor knew repose, when lifting high my hands and shrieks I prayed, implored the gods, and called Lucina's aid. She came but prejudiced to give my fate a sacrifice to vengeful Juno's hate. She hears the groaning anguish of my fits, and on the altar at my door she sits. O'er her left knee her crossing legs she cast, then knits her fingers close and wrings them fast. This stayed the birth, in muttering verse she prayed, the muttering verse the unfinished birth delayed. Now with fierce struggles raging with my pain, Jove's ingratitude I rave in vain. How did I wish for death? Such groans I sent, as might have made the flinty heart relent. Now the Cadmean matrons round me press, offer their vows, and seek to bring redress. Among the Theban dames Galanthus stands, strong-limbed, red-haired, and just to my commands. She first perceived that all these racking woes from the persisting hate of Juno rose. As here and there she passed, by chance she sees the seated goddess on her close-pressed knees. Her fast-knit hand she leans with cheerful voice. Galanthus cries, "Whoever thou art, rejoice! Congratulate the dame, she lies at rest, and length the gods Alcmena's womb have blessed." Swift from her seat the startled goddess springs. No more concealed, her hands abroad she flings. The charm unloosed, the birth my pangs relieved. Galanthus' laughter vexed, the power deceived. Fame says that goddess dragged the laughing maid fast by the hair. In vain her force essayed her grovelling body from the ground to rear. Changed the forefeet, her shrinking arms appear. Her hairy back her former hue retains. The form alone is lost, her strength remains. Who, since the lie did from her mouth proceed, shall from her pregnant mouth bring forth her breed? Nor shall she quit her long-frequented home, but haunt those houses where she loved to roam. The Fable of Dryope. She said, and for her lost Galanthus sighs, when the fair consort of her son replies, "Since your servant's ravished form bemoan, and kindly sigh for sorrows not your own, let me, if tears and grief permit, relate a nearer woe. No nymph of all, O Achelous, could compare for beauteous form with Dryope the fair, her tender mother's only hope and pride, myself the offspring of a second bride. This nymph, compressed by him who rules the day, whom Delphi and Delian I'll obey, Andromon loved, and blessed in all those charms that pleased a god, succeeded to her arms. A lake there was with shelving banks around, whose verdant summit fragrant myrtles crowned. Those shades, unknowing of the fates, she sought, and to the naiads flowery garlands brought. Her smiling babe, a pleasing charge, she pressed between her arms, and nourished at her breast. Not distant far a watery lotus grows. The spring was new, and all the verdant boughs, acorned with blossoms, promised fruits that vie in glowing colours with the Tyrian dye. Of these she cropped to please her infant son. And I myself the same rash act had done. But lo, I saw, as near her side I stood, the violated blossoms drop with blood. Upon the tree I cast a frightful look. The trembling tree with sudden horror shook. Lotus, the nymph, if rural tales be true, as from Priapus's lawless lust she flew, forsook her form, and fixing here became a flowery plant, which still preserves her name. This change unknown, astonished at the sight, my trembling sister strove to urge her flight. Yet first the pardon of the nymphs implored, and those offended sylvan powers adored. But when she backward would have fled, she found her stiffening feet were rooted to the ground. In vain to free her fastened feet she strove, and as she struggles only moves above. She feels the encroaching bark around her grow by slow degrees, and cover all below. Surprised at this, her trembling hand she heaves to rend her hair. Her hand is filled with leaves. Where late was hair, the shooting leaves are seen to rise, and shade her with a sudden green. The child emphasis to her bosom pressed, perceived a colder and a harder breast, and found the springs that ne'er till then denied their milky moisture on a sudden dried. I saw unhappy what I now relate, and stood the helpless witness of thy fate. Embraced thy boughs, the rising bark delayed their wish to grow and mingle shade with shade. Behold, Andromon and the unhappy sire appear, and for their Dryope inquire. A springing tree for Dryope they find, and print warm kisses on the panting rind. Prostrate with tears their kindred plant bedew, and close embraced as the roots they grew. The face was all that now remained of thee, no more a woman, nor yet quite a tree. From every leaf distills a trickling tear, and straight a voice, while yet a voice remains, thus through the trembling boughs in sighs complains. If to the wretched any faith be given, I swear by all the unpitying powers of heaven, no wilful crime this vengeance heavy bred. In mutual innocence our lives we led. If this be false, let these new greens decay. Let sounding axes lop my limbs away, and crackling flames on all my honours prey. Now from my branching arms this infant bear. Let some kind nurse supply a mother's care. Yet to his mother let him oft be led, sport in her shades, and in her shades be fed. Teach him when first his infant voice shall frame imperfect words, and lisp his mother's name. To hail this tree, and say with weeping eyes, within this plant my hapless parent lies. And when in youth he seeks the shady woods, oh, let him fly the crystal lakes and floods, nor touch the fatal flowers, but warned by me, believe a goddess shrined in every tree. My sire, my sister, and my spouse, farewell. If in your breasts or love or pity dwell, protect your plant, nor let my branches feel the browsing cattle or the piercing steel. Farewell, and since I cannot bend to join my lips to yours, advance at least to mine, my son. Thy mother's parting kiss receive, while yet thy mother had a kiss to give. I can no more, the creeping rind invades my closing lips, and hides my head in shades. Move your hands, the bark shall soon suffice, without their aid to seal these dying eyes. She ceased at once to speak, and ceased to be, and all the nymph was lost within the tree. Yet latent life through her new branches reigned, and long the plant a human heat retained. Aeolus restored to youth, while Io, the fatal change declares, Alcema's pitying hand oft wiped her tears. Grief too streamed down her cheeks, soon sorrow flies, and rising joy the trickling moisture dries. Lo, Aeolus stands before their eyes. A youth he stood, and the soft down began o'er his smooth chin to spread and promise man. Hebe submitted to her husband's prayers, instilled new vigor, and restored his years. The prophecy of Themis. Now from her lips a solemn oath had passed, that Aeolus this gift alone should taste. Had not just Themis thus maturely said, which checked her vow and awed the blooming maid, Thebes is embroiled in war. Capenus stands invincible, but by the thunderer's hands ambition shall the guilty brothers fire. Both rush to mutual wounds, and both expire. The reeling earth shall ope her gloomy womb, where the yet breathing bard shall find his tomb. The son shall bathe his hands in parents' blood, and in one act be both unjust and good. Of home and sense deprived, wherever he flies, the Furies and his mother's ghost he spies. His wife the fatal bracelet shall implore, and Phegeus stain his sword in kindred gore. Calorho shall then with suppliant prayer prevail on Jupiter's relenting ear. Jove shall with youth her infant sons inspire, and bid their bosoms glow with manly fire. The debate of the gods. When Themis thus with prescient voice had spoke, among the gods a various murmur broke. Dissension rose in each immortal breast, that one should grant what was denied the rest. Aurora for her aged spouse complains, and Ceres grieves for Jason's freezing veins. Vulcan would Erichthonius' years renew. Her future race the care of Venus drew. She would Anchises' blooming age restore. A different care employed each heavenly power. Thus various interests did their jars increase, till Jove arose. He spoke, their tumults cease. Is any reverence to our presence given? Then why this discord among the powers of heaven? Who can the settled will of fate subdue? 'Twas by the fates that Achelous knew a second youth. The fates' determined doom shall give Calorho's race a youthful bloom. Arms nor ambition can this power obtain. Quell your desires, even the fates restrain. Could I their will control, no ruling years had Achelous bent down with silver hairs. Then Rhadamanthus still had youth possessed, and Minos with eternal bloom been blessed. Jove's words the Sinnoh moved. The powers give over, and urge in vain unjust complaint no more. Since Rhadamanthus' veins now slowly flowed, and Iphis and Minos bore the load. Minos, who in the flower of youth and fame made mighty nations tremble at his name. Infirm with age, the proud Melitus fears, vain of his birth, and in the strength of years. And now regarding all his realms as lost, he durst not force him from his native coast. But you by choice, Milotus, fled his reign, and thy swift vessel ploughed the Aegean main. On Asiatic shores a town you frame, which still is honoured with the founder's name. Here Eusenia knew, the beauteous maid, as on her father's winding banks she strayed. Caunus and Byblis hence their lineage trace, the double offspring of your warm embrace. The passion of Byblis. Let the sad fate of wretched Byblis prove a dismal warning to unlawful love. One birth gave being to the hapless pair, but more was Caunus' than a sister's care. Unknown she loved, for yet the gentle fire rose not in flames, nor kindled to desire. 'Twas thought no sin to wonder at his charms, hang on his neck and languish in his arms. Thus, winged with joy, fled the soft hours away, and all the fatal guilt on harmless nature lay. But love, too soon from piety declined, insensibly depraved her yielding mind. Dressed she appears, with nicest art adorned, and every youth but her loved brother scorned. For him alone she laboured to be fair, and cursed all charms that might with her compare. 'Twas she, and only she, must Caunus please. Sick at her heart, yet knew not her disease. She called him Lord, for brother was a name too cold, and dull for her aspiring flame. And when he spoke, "If sister," he replied, for Byblis changed that frozen word, she cried. Yet waking still she watched her struggling breast, and love's approaches were in vain addressed. Till gentle sleep an easy conquest made, and in her soft embrace the conqueror was laid. But oh, too soon the pleasing vision fled, and left her blushing on the conscious bed. "Ah me," she cried, "how monstrous do I seem! Why these wild thoughts and this incestuous dream? Envy herself, 'tis true, must own his charms, but what is beauty in a sister's arms? Oh, were I not that despicable she, how blessed, how pleased, how happy I should be! But unregarded now must bear my pain, and but in dreams my wishes can obtain. O sea-born goddess, with thy wanton boy, was ever such a charming scene of joy, such perfect bliss, such ravishing delight, ne'er hid before in the kind shades of night. How pleased my heart, in what sweet raptures tossed, even life in itself, in the soft combat lost, while breathless he on my heaved bosom lay, and snatched the treasures of my soul away. If the bare fancy so affects my mind, how should I rave if to the substance joined? O gentle Caunus, quit thy hated line, or let thy parents be no longer mine. Oh, that in common all things were enjoyed, but those alone who have our hopes destroyed. Were I a princess, thou, an humble swain, the proudest king should rival thee in vain. It cannot be, alas! The dreadful ill is fixed by fate, and he's my brother still. Hear me, ye gods, must have friends in heaven, for Jove himself was to a sister given. But what are these prerogatives above to the short liberties of human love? Fantastic thoughts! Down, down, forbidden fires! Or instant death extinguish my desires. Strict virtue, then, with thy malicious leave, without a crime, I make a kiss receive. But say, should I in spite of laws comply, yet cruel Caunus might himself deny? No pity take of an inflicted maid, for love's sweet game must be by couples played. Yet why should youth in charms like mine despair? Such fears never startled the Aeolian pair. No ties of blood could their full hopes destroy. They broke through all for the prevailing joy. And who can tell but Caunus too may be racked and tormented in his breast for me, like me, to the extremest anguish drove. Like me, just waking from a dream of love. But stay, oh, whither would my fury run? What arguments I urge to be undone? Away, fond Byblis, quench these guilty flames. Caunus thy love but as a brother claims. Yet, had he first been touched with love of me, the charming youth could I despairing see? Oppressed with grief and dying by disdain, ah, no, too sure I should have eased his pain. Since then, if Caunus asked me, it were done, asking myself, what dangers can I run? But canst thou ask, and see that right betrayed, from Pyrrha down to thy whole sex conveyed? That self-denying gift we all enjoy of wishing to be one, yet seeming to be coy. Well then, for once, let a fond mistress woo. The force of love no custom can subdue. This frantic passion he by words shall know, soft as the melting heart from whence they flow. The pencil then in her fair hand she held, by fear discouraged, but by love compelled. She writes, then blots, writes on and blots again, likes it as a fit, then raises it as vain. Shame and assurance in her face appeared, and a faint hope yet yielding to despair. Sister was wrote and blotted as a word, which she, and Caunus too, she hoped abhorred. But now resolved to be no more controlled by scrupulous virtue, thus her grief she told. Thy lover, gentle Caunus, wishes thee that health which thou alone canst give to me, O charming youth, the gift I ask bestow, ere thou the name of the fond writer know. To thee without a name I would be known, since, knowing that my frailty I must own, yet why should I my wretched name conceal, when thousand instances my flames reveal? Wan looks and weeping eyes have spoke my pain, and sighs discharged from my heaved heart in vain. Had I not wished my passion might be seen, what could such fondness and embraces mean? Such kisses too, oh heedless, lovely boy, without a crime no sister could enjoy. Yet, though the extremest rage has racked my soul, and raging fires in my parched bosom row, be witness, gods, how piously I strove to rid my thoughts of this enchanting love. But who could escape so fierce and sure a dart, aimed at a tender and defenceless heart? Alas, what made good suffer I have borne, ere the dire secret from my breast was torn. To thee, a helpless vanquished wretch, I come. 'Tis you can save, or give my doom, my life or death. This moment you may choose. Yet think, oh think, no hated stranger sues, no foe but one, alas, too near allied, and wishing still much nearer to be tied. The forms of decency let age debate, and virtue's rules by their cold moral state. Their ebbing joys give leisure to enquire, and blame those noble flights our youth inspire. Where nature kindly summons, let us go. Our sprightly years no bounds in love should know, should feel no check of guilt, and fear no ill. Lovers and gods act all things at their will. We gain one blessing from our hated kin, since our paternal freedom hides the sin. Uncensured in each other's arms we lie. Think then how easy to complete our joy. Oh, pardon and oblige a blushing maid, whose rage the pride of her vain sex betrayed. Nor let my tomb thus mournfully complain. Here Byblis lies, by her loved Achelous slain. Forced here to end, she with a falling tear tempered the pliant wax, which did the signet bear. The curious cipher was impressed by art, but love had stamped one deeper in her heart. Her page, a youth of confidence and skill, secret as night, stood waiting on her will. Sighing, she cried, "Bear this, thou faithful boy, to my sweet partner in eternal joy." Here a long pause her secret guilt confessed, and when at length she would have spoke the rest, half the dear name laid buried in her breast. Thus, as he listened to her vain command, down fell the letter from her trembling hand. The omen shocked her soul. "Yet go," she cried. "Can a request from Byblis be denied?" To the Meandrian youth this message is borne. The half-read lines by his fierce rage were torn. "Hence, hence," he cried, "thou pander to her lust. Bear hence the triumph of thy impious trust. Thy instant death will but divulge her shame, or thy life's blood should quench the guilty flame." Frighted from threatening Achelous he withdrew, and with the dreadful news to his lost mistress flew. The sad repulse so struck the wounded fair, her sense was buried in her wild despair. Pale was her visage as the ghastly dead, and her scared soul from the sweet mansion fled. Yet, with her life renewed, her love returns, and faintly thus her cruel fate she mourns. "'Tis just, ye gods, was my false reason blind to write a secret of this tender kind? With female craft I should at first have strove by dubious hints to sound his distant love, and tried those useful though dissembled arts which women practice on disdainful hearts. I should have watched whence the black storm might rise, ere I had trusted the unfaithful skies. Now on the rolling billows I am tossed, and with extended sails on the blind shelves am lost. Did not indulgent heaven my doom foretell, when from my hand the fatal letter fell? What madness seized my soul, and urged me on to take the only course to be undone? I could myself have told the moving tale with such alluring grace, as much prevail. Then had his eyes beheld my blushing fears, my rising sighs, and my descending tears, round his dear neck these arms I then had spread, and if rejected, at his feet been dead. If singly these had not his thoughts inclined, yet all united would have shocked his mind. Perhaps my careless page might be in fault, and in a luckless hour the fatal message brought. Business and worldly thoughts might fill his breast, sometimes even love itself may be an irksome guest. He could not else have treated me with scorn, for Achelous was not of a tigress born, nor steel nor adamant has fenced his heart. Like mine, 'tis naked to the burning dart. Away, false fears, he shall be mine. In death alone I will claim my resign, and for my guilt much vainer to atone, repulsed and baffled, fiercer still she burns, and Canis with disdain her impious love returns. He saw no end of her injurious flame, and fled his country to avoid the shame. Forsaken, Byblis, who had hopes no more, burst out in rage, and her loose robes she tore. With her fair hands she smote her tender breast, and to the wondering world her love confessed. Over hills and dales, over rocks and streams she flew, but still in vain did her wild lust pursue. Wearied at length on the cold earth she fell, and now in tears alone could her sad story tell. Relenting gods in pity fixed her there, and to a fountain turned the weeping fair. The fame of Iphis and Ianthe. The fame of this perhaps through Crete had flown, but Crete had newer wonders of her own. In Iphis changed near the Nocian bounds, as loud report the miracle resounds. At Phaestus dwelt a man of honest blood, but meanly born, and not so rich as good, esteemed and loved by all the neighbourhood, who to his wife, before the time assigned for childbirth came, thus bluntly spoke his mind. If heaven, said Lygdis, will vouchsafe to hear, I have but 2 petitions to prefer. Short pains for thee, for me a son and heir. Girls cost as many throes in bringing forth, beside when born the tits are little worth. Weak puling things, unable to sustain their share of labour, and their bread to gain. If therefore thou a creature shalt produce of so great charges and so little use, bear witness, heaven, with what reluctancy her hapless innocence I doom to die. He said, and common tears the common grief display of him who bade and her who must obey. Yet Telethusa still persists to find fit arguments to move a father's mind, to extend his wishes to a larger scope, and in one vessel not confine his hope. Lygdis continues hard, her time drew near, and she her heavy load could scarcely bear, when slumbering in the latter shades of night, before the approaches of returning light, she saw, or thought she saw, before her bed a glorious train, and Isis at their head. Her moony horns were on her forehead placed, and yellow shelves her shining temples graced. A mitre for a crown she wore on high, the dog and dappled bull were waiting by. Osiris sought along the banks of Nile the silent god, the sacred crocodile. And last, a long procession moving on with timbrels that assist the labouring moon. Her slumber seemed dispelled and brought awake. She heard a voice that thus distinctly spake. My votary, thy babe from death defend, nor fear to save whatever the gods will send. Delude with art thy husband's dire decree. When danger calls, repose thy trust on me, and know thou hast not served a thankless deity. This promise made, with night the goddess fled. With joy the woman wakes and leaves her bed, devoutly lifts her spotless hands on high, and prays the powers their gift to ratify. Now grinding pains proceed to bearing throes, till its own weight the burden did disclose. 'Twas of the beauteous kind, and brought to light with secrecy, to shun the father's sight. The indulgent mother did her care employ, and passed it on her husband for a boy. The nurse was conscious of the fact alone. The father paid his vows as for a son, and called him Iphis, by a common name, which either sex with equal right may claim. Iphis his grandsire was, the wife was pleased, of half the fraud by fortune's favour eased. The doubtful name was used without deceit, and truth was covered with a pious cheat. The habit showed a boy, the beauteous face with manly fierceness mingled female grace. Now 13 years of age were swiftly run, when the fond father thought the time drew on of settling in the world his only son. Ianthe was his choice, so wondrous fair, her form alone with Iphis could compare. A neighbour's daughter of his own degree, and not more blessed with fortune's goods than he. They soon espoused, for they with ease were joined, who were before contracted in the mind. Their age the same, their inclinations too, and bred together in one school they grew. Thus, fatally disposed to mutual fires, they felt before they knew the same desires. Equal their flame, unequal was their care. One loved with hope, one languished in despair. The maid accused the lingering day alone, for whom she thought a man, she thought her own. But Iphis bends beneath a greater grief, as fiercely burns but hopes for no relief. Even her despair adds fuel to her fire. A maid with madness does a maid desire. And scarce refraining tears, alas, she said, what issue of my love remains for me? How wild a passion works within my breast, with what prodigious flames am I possessed? Could I the care of Providence deserve, heaven must destroy me. If it would preserve, and that's my fate, or sure, it would have sent some usual evil for my punishment. Not this unkindly curse to rage and burn, where nature shows no prospect of return, nor cows for cows consume with fruitless fire, nor mares, when hot, their fellow mares desire. The father of the fold supplies his ewes, the stag through secret woods his hind pursues, and birds for mates the males of their own species choose. Her female's nature guards from female flame, and joins two sexes to preserve the game. Would I were nothing, or not what I am, Crete, famed for monsters, wanted of her store, till my new love produced one monster more. The daughter of the sun a bull desired, and yet even then a male, a female, fired. Her passion was extravagantly new, but mine is much the matter of the two. To things impossible she was not bent, but found the means to compass her intent. To cheat his eyes she took a different shape, yet still she gained a lover and a leap. Should all the wit of all the world conspire, should Daedalus assist my wild desire, what art can make me able to enjoy, or what can change Ianthe to a boy? Extinguish then thy passion, hopeless maid, and recollect thy reason for thy aid. Know what thou art, and love as maidens ought, and drive these golden wishes from thy thought. Thou canst not hope thy fond desires to gain. Where hope is wanting, wishes are in vain. And yet, no guards against our joys conspire. No jealous husband hinders our desire. My parents are propitious to my wish, and she herself consenting to the bliss. All things concur to prosper our design, all things to prosper any love but mine. And yet I never can enjoy the fair. 'Tis past the power of heaven to grant my prayer. Heaven has been kind as far as heaven can be. Our parents with our own desires agree, but nature, stronger than the gods above, refuses her assistance to my love. She sets the bar that causes all my pain. One gift refused makes all thy bounty vain. And now the happy day is just at hand to bind our hearts in Hymen's holy band. Our hearts, but not our bodies, thus accursed. In midst of water I complain of thirst. Why comest thou, Juno, to these barren rites, to bless a bed defrauded of delights? But why should Hymen lift his torch on high, to see two brides in cold embraces lie? Thus lovesick Iphis her vain passion mourns, with equal ardour fair Ianthe burns, invoking Hymen's names and Juno's power, to speed the work and haste the happy hour. She hopes while Telethusa fears the day, and strives to interpose some new delay. Now feigns a sickness, now is in a fright for this bad omen or that boding sight. But having done whatever she could devise and emptied all her magazine of lies, the time approached. The next ensuing day, the fatal secret must to light betray. Then Telethusa had recourse to prayer. She and her daughter, with dishevelled hair, trembling with fear, great Isis they adored, embraced her altar, and her aid implored. Fair queen, who dost on fruitful Egypt smile, who swayest the sceptre of the Pharian isle, and sevenfold falls of disemboguing Nile, relieve in this our last distress, she said. A suppliant mother and a mournful maid, thou goddess, thou wert present to my sight, revealed I saw thee by thy own fair light. I saw thee in my dream as I now see thee, with all thy marks of awful majesty. The glorious train that compassed thee around, and heard the hollow timbrel's hollow, holy sound. Thy words I noted, which I still retain. Let not thy sacred oracles be vain. That Iphis lives, that I myself am free from shame and punishment, I owe to thee. On thy protection all our hopes depend. Thy counsel saved us. Let thy power defend. Her tears pursued her words, and while she spoke the goddess nodded, and her altar shook. The temple doors, as with a blast of wind, were heard to clap. The lunar horns that bind the brows of Isis cast a blaze around. The trembling timbrel made a murmuring sound. Some hopes these happy omens did impart. Forth went the mother with a beating heart. Not much in fear, nor fully satisfied, but Iphis followed with a larger stride. The whiteness of her skin forsook her face, her looks emboldened with an awful grace. Her features and her strength together grew, and her long hair to curling locks withdrew. Her sparkling eyes with manly vigor shone. Big was her voice, audacious was her tone. The latent parts at last revealed began to shoot and spread, and burnish into man. The maid becomes a youth. No more delay your vows, but look and confidently pay their gifts the parents to the temple bear. The votive tables this inscription wear: Iphis the man has to the goddess paid the vows that Iphis offered when a maid. Now, when the star of day had shown his face, Venus and Juno with their presence graced the nuptial rites, and Hymen from above, descending to complete their happy love. The gods of marriage lend their mutual aid, and the warm youth enjoys the lovely maid.